Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Adam's Music Box. And today I want to talk about a very important record label in the history of music, particularly of black music and of jazz in particular. And this was called, appropriately enough, Black Jazz Records. It was founded in Oakland, California in 1969 by the great jazz pianist Gene Russell, who was originally from LA. Now, this label was unique. We've been talking a bit about unique labels lately, but this is one of the most unique of all. It only released around 20 records in total during its years of operation between 1969 and 1975. But in that period, the albums it released were all simply brilliant. They were sonic treats for the ears, and a lot of them were from artists more well known for being sidemen than for being leaders. But Gene gave these artists an opportunity to lead their own sessions. There was absolutely nothing off limits in terms of the musicality, and it really pushed important social and musical boundaries. It was one of the first jazz labels that was owned and operated by a black musician to exist anywhere in the world for decades when it opened in 69. Now, all of the recordings are of stellar quality. A lot of care to quality control for the sessions was put into this label. The most well-known artist on this label was Doug Carn, who recorded a lot with his equally famous wife, Jean Carn. And the records that they did together on the Black label were absolutely amazing. There were also people like Henry Franklin, and Calvin Keys, and others, Kelly Patterson, who really made great recordings. There was even something by the jazz musician Chester Thompson, not related to the drummer of Frank Zappa and later Genesis and Weather Report fame. Altogether, the label made records that I think really make for an interesting listen. And luckily, a very kind person has put all 20 of these albums on Spotify. Now, a question that might arise is why are these records that were so comparatively obscure in their own day, now very easy to find on streaming services around the world, where by contrast, a label that started only a few years later by the exceptional pianist Stanley Cowell, the great Strata East Records, some of their titles are still out of print, although some of the more famous ones are in fact available to stream or purchase. Well, it's an interesting story. The label, after it closed in 75, tended to fade into obscurity, but a lot of hip hop artists who were familiar with the records that came out in the early to mid 70s resurrected them in the form of samples. And this led to a general interest in reviving the label long after Gene Russell died in 1981. Eventually, a Japanese label by the name of Snow Dog bought the distribution rights and put them all on streaming platforms from the original master tapes throughout the world. So Tidal, Spotify, Amazon, Apple, you can find all of them. Original LP pressings of these titles tend, though, to go for a lot of money because, as a boutique label, as we'd call it today, not all that many of these records were pressed. So if you can get your hands on one of those, well, you'll have to have a lot of money and you'll also have to be very lucky to find one. But if you want to listen to the music, just go to Spotify. I'll put the link in the description to the playlist of all of the records on Black Jazz Records. Some are a bit more on the avant-garde side, some are incredibly accessible. All of them are deeply soulful, very spiritual in many cases, and very ethereal. This isn't the sort of finger-snapping commercial style jazz that some might be used to. It's really it's jazz as a state of mind rather than as a musical template or format. It's very modern, very ahead of its time. And the proof of that is that hip hop artists from the 80s and 90s onward really loved sampling some of the grooves from these records. So I would say get into Black Jazz Records. Only 20 albums exist, each one really, really worth listening to. Like, subscribe, and we will see you next time.